Welcome back to your midweek dose of motivation here at the Motivating Force. Not too much of a midweek special this week. We're just going to have a continuation off of Monday's conversation, which is, what type of man are you?
I'm Josue, he's Justin. We're back again for another episode. This is going to be the continuation like he was saying, so we're going to be talking about the solutions now and how to avoid being the beta extreme, how to avoid being the alpha extreme, and how to kind of guide yourself on your path to being a gentleman, which is that goal of the perfect balance. Where do you want to start? You want to start with beta? How to avoid being a beta?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And mind you, real quick, if you are a female listening to this, we do have some information in here that you'll find valuable as well. This will help you understand what type of man you're dealing with or want to be dealing with, and kind of how to help them along through this journey of just getting into a better lifestyle for themselves, which ultimately will help you.
So for step one that I have to avoid being a beta male, I have to cut out the submissive behavior. Now, let's get into that. Submissive behavior when it's coming down to relationships or seeking a relationship from somebody, putting that person up on a pedestal, whether it be man, female, whatever your sexual orientation. Cut that out.
100%?
100%. Because you're not doing yourself a favor. You're hurting yourself because you're wasting all your time and energy and trying to be something productive and efficient for yourself on wasting it away on this person that's not interested in you. You know, stop being a simp when you can be a better individual for yourself. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's one of those number one traits that betas need to be on the lookout for. This is what harms you, is being too submissive or just submissive in general. And it most definitely has its effect when it comes to relationships, because that type of submissiveness will kind of divert your mind into believing these fantasies or false realities that just aren't really there. And you're going to be wasting your time, like you said, chasing after these things that it's really a waste of your time. And what this does also is it's going to reinforce in your mind that you're not worth anything.
Yeah, and being submissive when it comes to a relationship is that it's going to start like a drastic power dynamic. Whether, let's say, like with your girlfriend, then she's going to start being like ego through the roof, you know? Like she's going to start, well, let me change this so it's not like I'm attacking females. The ability for them to start manipulating you when you're very submissive and you're a beta, it's going to be a drastic difference than if you were like knowing where you stand. You know, if you were a gentleman or if you're an alpha, it's going to be a drastic difference in a power dynamic in a relationship, as opposed to just being like the dog that every time you walk over to it, it's going to lay on its back, like show you its belly.
Yeah, it's definitely clear, like, we're not obviously trying to attack any particular person, especially, we're not trying to attack the betas or the alphas or, females who take advantage one way or another, whatever the case is. We're just trying to drive these points home and help people wake up and realize that these are affecting your life in such a negative way. And relationships is just the best example, because that's where these traits are most prevalent, but they do also affect your professional life as well, and just the way you communicate with people in general. You can have submissive qualities in your friendships, right? With people, there's no sexual attraction. You're not trying to buy them flowers all the time to get in bed with them, but your friends that constantly, oh, I need a ride here, I need a ride there, and they just always come to you because you'll just always give it to them.
Yeah, they're going to be walking all over you at that point. You're not standing up for yourself, like I was saying previously. But to move on to my next point is to cut out the white knighting. If you know what that means, it's basically when you start to assume that like women or the people that you're interested in, that they can't live without you in their life. Like nobody's able to be independent anymore. In your head, when you're that much of a beta, like we're talking about extremes here, like they can't go on their day without you interfering and like putting down your sweater on the ground so then they can step over a puddle so then they don't get their shoes wet, or you know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
Like that white knighting effect where you're thinking they need you.
Yeah, you're also always looking for that golden moment to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Time and time again, and it's going to get old really quick.
Yeah, like I said on Monday, it's that magic switch that it's going to be that Hollywood romance movie that's going to make them fall in love with you out of nowhere.
Yeah. And for what it is and what it's worth, love is just, it's an accumulation of things that happens, you know. Love is that proof over time. If you think you're going to lay your coat down on the floor and she's going to be like, this man got his Gucci sweater wet, I think I love him. You're crazy. You're crazy. It's not what love is.
Well, let's be honest. I don't think a lot of betas are walking around with Gucci sweaters. That's going to be more of the alpha males that are being a little bit too much. Anyway, but yeah, that's a pretty easy one that I think everybody can understand. Like, I can speak for most people and say that that's probably like 10% of betas, because you don't have people that are that extreme. But the third one is where it really hits home with a lot of people, because you're unaware of being a beta. That's problem number 2. Avoid that. Self-reflect. Know your worth.
Yeah, it's super important on both ends of the spectrum here. And of course, we're going to talk about this when it comes to alphas and knowing your worth, because like we mentioned previously, we're talking about, you know, alphas coming down to being at a more, you know, reliable level, such as being the gentleman, and then betas have to come up. So when we talk about knowing your worth, it goes both ways for both cases. And when we talk about it with betas, you have a tendency to create a false sense of value, whereas you're taking these kind of crazy things that you do for people, or these submissive acts you do for people when they help you, or when people ask you for like these little petty things, or like abuse you and constantly giving you rides or whatever the case may be. And in your brain, you're like, oh, I'm building up my self-worth. I'm building up my value. I'm building up this relationship because I'm constantly giving.
Yeah.
And that's the dangerous part of this. This is that self-introspection, to be like, that's not value.
Yeah. And what we can use for that one, instead of relationships, family members, right? You can have those older brothers or sisters that constantly ask things for you, and you're doing it, right? Because you feel like you're obliged to do it, or you're obligated to do it. And when in reality, they're kind of just taking advantage of you, but you're not seeing it because you're just making up the excuse on, oh, well, it's like they just had to do that because of some reason, you know, like you're trying to right their wrong, when in reality you shouldn't. You should just be able to put your foot down at that point. Like, yeah. Even though you're my older brother or sister, I can't do this. Like, we got to stop. You're taking advantage of me at this point. We got to cut that out.
Yeah, and I feel like that ties into one of the solutions that I had here for coming out of being a beta, and that's gets you out of that false sense and helping you see these things and seeing these abusive things that people may or may not be doing to you. And that is to start recognizing when you are appreciated. I kind of actually put that as my number 1, as towards helping you get out of this, because the appreciation is something that you always seek as a beta, right? That's the whole point, really. And you need to get that grounded sense of yourself and realize when you're truly being appreciated. And as soon as you get that appreciation from people, if you're getting it from you giving something, make that mental note to stop giving for the rest of the day at that point, and then see the reaction you get. Because if you don't continually get that appreciation back, they're using you.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that one, because a lack of appreciation, like, in other words, when you're a beta, you're defining your self-worth by other people's opinions. That needs to change. You know, you have to be able to set your own worth and know what you stand for and find those core values, and not let toxic relationships or toxic alphas or whatever the case may be. Like, maybe you're the toxic one because you're a toxic beta. So you need to start making the right choices. And since I'm bringing up the word toxic a lot, back to our first couple episodes that we've ever recorded, toxic masculinity, this is something that can fix toxic alpha and toxic beta. Exercise. Really important. It's going to fix your mental health, your physical health, and focus on hygiene as well. Right? Because you think betas, you think incels, especially, which are the extreme betas. You think of like some super pudgy guy in like a basement trolling everything on the internet because every girl he knows has wronged him and he never gets laid, so he's just going to let himself go, eat fast food all the time. Work out. Feel better about yourself.
Yeah, he's going to give himself that appreciation that he's been deprived from. And he's going to do that through those immediate gratifications. That fast food, that soda all the time, the caffeine, the nicotine, unfortunately in some other cases, harder drugs than caffeine and nicotine, and you get these people that just spiral out of control from it. And all that comes from not having that ground to stand on.
Yeah. And you know what's great too is like those same people that want that instant gratification of just eating junk food all the time. I work out every day. I eat right. But then I can go home, feel good about myself, still pull out a bag of chips and eat it and have crumbs all over my chest. Proud.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing. Everything's always about moderation, and you can have that time to reward yourself, because if you have worked out all week and you're like, you know what? I even hit a new, personal best on my deadlift, or I ran an extra mile this week, like, let me go get that bag of chips, because the thing that people always confused with trying to live a more structured lifestyle is that you're going to stop having fun, or you're going to stop giving yourself rewards in the same way that you get rewards now. No, I do the same thing. You get a bag of chips, I go get me a thing of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. That one container, because I checked, 1,260 calories. Okay?
Yeah.
I ate that whole thing in one night.
Jesus.
And in one night, I mean one sitting. But you know what I did that week? I ran 3 5Ks.
Yeah.
And when Sunday came around and I was having my cheat meal and I was like, yep.
Want some ice cream.
I'm pulling the trigger. And it happened, You still get to reward yourself the same way. And this is something that betas need to realize. And because on the alpha end, it kind of goes the other way, where you need to pull back on your reward system there, buddy. But for betas, you need to realize, like, hey, just because I'm trying to do better for myself, that doesn't mean you need to be boring and bland and not have fun. You're just, that change of lifestyle is going to be scary, but my Ben and Jerry's ice cream is still there now as it was 6 years ago when I was just living life.
Yeah. It's a good point. And that whole change of lifestyle and having fun, we covered this a little bit briefly on the end of last episode, but where you were talking about cutting out, or you were talking about not being fun, right, to other people and how that could be a problem for gentlemen. And this is actually the last point that I have for avoiding becoming a beta or falling into that beta trap, is to cut out the toxic people. Cut out those relationships that are just manipulating you or walking all over you. You need to be able to know your worth. That's all it comes down to, is have confidence in yourself. Know your worth and pick yourself up and move away from terrible people. There's no easier way to say that. You just have to be able to nut up and go. In reality, you just gotta move away from the toxicity, clear your head, have confidence, and your life's gonna change.
Yeah, I got to take a second to appreciate how, longtime listeners can tell how we've changed our content schedule here, and like how we share the information that we're to come on and talk about, and how at this point we do totally separate information and we kind of come together so that way we can make sure the conversation just continues to be as authentic and keeps that flow. And I'm just appreciating right now how our ultimate end solution was the same on this. And I think that also makes it an even stronger driving point, because I'm not even coming at this from some totally different angle. We've both done our own separate research. We've spent all week on this, as we do with every topic, and we've come to the same conclusion on this. So it's super important, man. You've got to find your self-worth, and you've got to accurately measure the people who appreciate you and those who don't.
Yeah.
And like Josue said, cut them out. And of course you're going to be scared to do that because you want people to give things to, right? You want to be that submissive because you think you're building up value when you're doing these things. So,
but also, real quick before you go on with that, we're not saying don't give people things, because I know it feels nice to give. Just know when to pull it back a little bit. Don't let it get a little bit overboard. We're not saying be Mr. Scrooge on Christmas. You can give some gifts.
Yeah.
If you're financially stable, back to another episode. But like, it does feel good to give as well. We're not telling you to just cut that out.
Yeah, but that's why you have to keep listening, because as we get into talking about being the ideal gentleman here, we're going to bring all that together to these middle grounds, So right now, just driving home to the individuals who need to hear it, if you can't cut people out entirely because of that nature, and you're like, I just can't do that because then I won't have anybody to like help out. One, you will, because even as structured and as genuine as you can be as a person, which is what it's all about, people in your life will come to you for help, and there is always a time to give it. So if you cut those people out, those toxic people out, just turn your phone off for a week or something. You know what I mean? It's just that simple step of giving yourself a little bit of a break, because when you do that and you're actually trying to evaluate what's going on in your life and what type of person you are, what type of man you are, that little break you give yourself, you're going to notice those positive differences. And then you can exemplify them and explode them into bigger, better results for yourself.
Yeah, and even when you do that with like shutting everything down, not only is it that mental clarity and knowing the positive things, but it's also a key moment to realize all the negative people. Because in that time when you try to like pull back from everybody because you were constantly just giving, you're going to notice when they're trying to find you and ask you for things instead of seeing how you're doing. They're going to be like, hey, why weren't you here? I needed you to do this. Or like, I don't know, just, I can't come up with an idea of like somebody manipulating you, but like they're trying to reach out for that.
Yeah.
Like for
the
something,
people that come and make you feel bad for not helping them that week, bingo, red flag.
Yep.
Red as this shirt. Pick them out, man. But speaking of that, you ready to talk about the people who take and have such a high reward system and they're God?
Hell yeah. All
right, let's do it.
All right, so going right into this, we're going to hit alphas.
Yep, that's exactly what I was referring to. So, alphas. You're over-aggressive naturally, right? We'll call it naturally. You have a very high reward system, right? You are the complete opposite of everything we were just talking about. And the opposite of an extreme is another extreme, and that's not good for you or the people around you. So if everything's always top dog, A1, gold medals, And if it's not, it's an absolute waste of your time.
Yeah.
Right? No room for error. Well, this is where we bring you down, right?
Yeah.
So instead of bringing you up, we're going to bring you down a little bit.
Your ego's already big enough. We got to kind of pull that down a little bit.
Yeah, let's trim the fat off of that, right? Because if you're an alpha, you don't want that fat on you, right? All right, let's do it. So the first thing that I think is good to help get alphas to be more grounded is to understand, and it's super simple, is to understand that we're all human, okay? So there is such a thing called human error, and it occurs all the time. And most of the time, unintentionally. And what you can notice if you're trying to decide on what type of man you are, you're going to be a little bit more classified in that alpha class if somebody makes a simple mistake and you just absolutely can't handle it. You know, you come home from work or something like that, and like the house is dirty or whatever, dishes aren't done, laundry's building up, and your spouse is sick in bed.
Yeah.
Why didn't you get this stuff done? Well, why didn't you take care of this? Well, come on, man. They're obviously not feeling good, but you don't account for that, right? It's all about, well, but you said you were going to do these things and you didn't do it. And now you take offense to that. You don't give room for that acceptance of the fact that we're all human.
Yeah, it like goes back to the different parts of toxic masculinity perfectly describes toxic alpha males, because they're just like quick to anger, quick to rage, but you got to cut that back. Human error, you're right.
Yeah. And for alphas who need a little bit more persuasion, as you will, naturally, right? We have a whole series on that on toxic masculinity. Feel free to check it out. And it's just funny, though, because you mentioned about the aggressiveness and the anger thing, and, you know, something that I'm going to let the audience know about here, because I'm gonna do a little thing and put this together, but I started doing carnivore diet. Sorry about getting off topic. And very strict carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
We're day 5 into it.
Yeah, and also, this is the guy that was talking about the keto diet he was doing. Go on.
Yeah, so... You know, we're going to continue down this path of carb absence in my life, right? Because personally, it just, I don't know, I feel it works great for me. I have more energy and focus when I'm not consuming sugar and just really carbs in general.
Well, yeah, carbs make you feel heavy, bloated. Not having that's going to make you think clearly.
Yeah, well, some people disagree with that, so I don't know. I just cover my bases. But they did mention how when you first start carnivore and everything, your body's kind of readjusting, you get a little bit more aggressive. I've noticed it.
Yeah. I mean, when I did it for a couple months, I noticed it lasts. So I felt like hazy at the beginning, and my, I want to say temper was up, but I was probably a little bit more quick to confrontation.
Yeah, like that intensity was there.
Yeah, I was ready to go at all times. And I think it did have something to do with the carnivore diet, because it's all animal byproduct.
Yeah.
You're basically just imagining eating the animal completely.
Yeah, that's been the fun part. And being on carnivore for a couple days now, once you start eating some of those things you never think about eating off of an animal, it is pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. But there's a point to that. Bringing that all back into topic here, it's really helped me kind of get some of these more how-tos, right? This episode's more of that directive, like, this is what you need to do if you're suffering from these issues, based off of our opinion, right? Disclaimer there. And of course, we've always, being in the structured lifestyle and improving that ourselves, right? Because we're not perfect either. And it's realizing the steps that I take to help control or divert that confrontation or that aggression that I might be feeling from time to time. Because obviously with it being a lot stronger being on carnivore, I'm having to kind of pull all all the little tricks I have out of the bag and use them so that way I keep my calm and continue being that ideal gentleman, or at least the best of it that I can be, you know?
Yeah, or even implying your stoic knowledge that you've acquired.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that plays a big role as well if you want to try to calm down on being too much of an alpha. Because when I was like looking into stoicism and everything, it's not an opposite of alpha, but it's almost it's like being a gentleman. It's almost the same core values that you have to have. It's that balance.
So that is actually tip number 2 here for alphas.
There you go.
There you go. Look into stoicism a little bit. You know, you're going to learn a lot of things that, trust me, it's going to connect with you. You're going to relate to a lot of it, and it's going to feel good to embrace some of those things, and it's going to help you let go. Because one of the issues that I see with the alphas is that, and let me get through the point, right? You're grounded as an alpha, okay? But your ground is more than what you stand on. Your ground extends across the whole universe and beyond. You are everything. That ground is solid for you, and it's way too much ground. And I think also in the same sense, it's that over-evaluation, right? So whereas the beta might over-evaluate some of that like abusive traits that they get back from people and that appreciation, and they think it's building up value, the alphas do the opposite with that. And they give themselves that value. They don't get it from the other people that they interact with on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
Their value is built up strictly based off of yourself. And this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because as a person is being structured and being grounded, it's like, well, how is that a bad thing? Right? We build our value off of ourselves, right? We try not to let other people's opinions affect us too much. But the issue with being the alpha is you're going to have this mindset, but you're fooling yourself. Because you still are driving your insecurities back by that value of other people. Because you're going to value yourself more based off of your promotion in the workplace, what position you hold. It doesn't even matter if you make more money than the next guy. It'll be all about how many more people do you have power over than the people around you. How many more people have you slept with, right? Because in the alpha world, well, if I've slept with more people than you, I'm more successful than you in that field.
I'm more of a man than you, kind of thing.
Exactly. And, I mean, hello, it's right there. That is 100% people's opinions of you, or it's the perception that you have of what people's opinions of you are going to be.
Yeah. So I was letting you get through that point because you were telling me to. Real quick, before we move on, Stoicism. Disclaimer again, we're not preaching to you about some new form of religion. This is an old type of philosophy, and I just wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of people don't know what Stoicism is, and they're going to be a little short-sighted when it comes to us telling them to look into something that sounds like a religion. So I know I've done the disclaimer again, but it was a lot of episodes ago, so just wanted to throw it out there again. But then back to like alphas and defining their self-worth with that power dynamic. That's very true, because I can have a manager that we make the same amount of money, but he feels that since I'm under him, like the lack of respect isn't there. It's the way that he treats other people, because he's that extreme alpha and that power dynamic is there. The like complete lack of respect just isn't doing anybody good. I was just going off your point.
You have a point? Another point, though? Do you have a point? Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. In total, I do feel like that will summarize alphas a little better. As you can see, there's obviously more things that need to be covered when you talk about betas, because there is a whole shift in mindset that needs to occur. And with alphas, it's not really a shift in mindset. It's more of the concept of taking it too far.
Yeah, I also think that there's way more betas than there are alphas.
Yeah.
Because even when you say natural born leaders, there's a few out there compared to every Joe Schmo, like I was saying before in the previous episode.
Yeah.
It's probably like way more than that. Like 7-3 ratio out of 10.
Good. 7-3 ratio out of 10. You heard it here. All right. No, that's good though. And
because a big problem is that like lack of knowledge of being a beta. So they think they're this leader and that they're big and tall, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're still just a beta, because when they walk out of that, like if you surround yourself with a bunch of betas, you could be the alpha in that group. But as soon as you step out of that group, you're back to just being a normal beta.
Yeah.
You're not an alpha.
Yeah. Whereas when you're grounded and you're in the center of everything between these two here, and you're working on being the best individual that you can be, regardless of people's opinions, then it doesn't matter what group you go to, because your value does not change. And you will not allow that to affect your actions. But that's being a little preachy. Obviously, you can see here the main overall consensus for being an alpha and why you can let it go too far and have some issues here is that, not all of them, of course, but the majority of qualities that as an alpha that they'll have, they're good qualities. They really are. But it's just taken anywhere from 1 to 10 steps too far.
Yeah.
And you need to recognize that, realize that, and work on toning it down. And like you mentioned before, that ego, you can't let that ego affect you, because as you're trying to taper down here and like, okay, well, I need to be strong, but, well, I guess I need to do, humans make errors. Wow, who would have thought? Let me forgive some people for falling short of maybe what I expected them to do, right? And you start doing that. The thought that comes into your mind as the alpha is going to be, oh, well, now I appear to be soft.
Yeah.
But you don't. You're still strong, right? Or maybe you do dip down too far and you do become soft, right?
But I feel like if you are that alpha, true strength is being able to forgive somebody. Knowing that human error is possible, forgiving them, and even if they don't give you that, like, I don't know, response back that you're looking for because your ego's up there, just the subtle act of forgiving them is the strength you needed or that you were looking for.
Yeah. And it's going to come back 100%, Like that's the whole point there, is you're going to worry that you're going to lose these good qualities if you taper them back. And trust me, for how many steps ahead you are in those qualities, you're not going to lose them. You might take it a step back too far, but you already have those good qualities, so you're more apt to realize when people are taking advantage of you, when those things are happening, and you'll be like, oh, okay, hold on, wait, let me bring this back up a little bit. And there's going to be some trial and error there, and you're going to level off at the point that you need to be at. And that's the whole point of letting your ego go, because at some point when you're doing that cycle and you do dip too low, something's going to happen to hurt your ego, and that's what's going to make you come back up, because you're going to realize that.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Ego is a problem. Too much ego can do some crazy damage. And when you have too much of an ego, even if you do have those good qualities and those good traits that you were talking about, you're just lying to yourself at that point. And then you can ruin relationships. You can ruin your reputation, like I was saying before. And that's why we need to fix these extremes, the same way that we have extremes in politics. Let's get clickbaity. We can have extremes in how we just interact with one another. And that's why this third point is really the solution. It's not how to avoid these steps anymore. It's going to be more on how to just focus on becoming that middle ground, becoming that gentleman that you're aspiring to be if you're looking for that structured life. And again, this is towards males because we don't have experience as being women.
Correct. So, as you can see, when we get into the discussion here of being the proper gentleman, and this is going to be a little bit quicker on this end, right? Because we're going to this is more so, being the gentleman is more of a summary of what we've talked about. Because from the betas coming up and the alphas coming down, all we're doing is creating that ground that betas need to stand on. And we're also reducing the ground that alphas stand on. If your grounded sense goes further than your eye can see, it's more than you can handle. Your ground at a perfect ideal point should be everything you need in your life.
Yep.
You need to have that grounded sense over everything that really matters.
Yeah. And that's why I was saying that stoicism is great to use as like stepping stones when trying to accomplish this, because a lot of stoicism really is like self-reflection, and like it relies on the individual, not on what can other people do for me or what can I do for other people, right? That's alphas and betas. It's more of what can I do for myself and how to avoid letting all the other nonsense and distractions really affect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think in general, like as a man, and not to say that it's not for women, but this is me saying I don't know, right? But as a man, you're going to have that innate sense that you want to make some sort of accomplishment in your life, right? It's true for everybody, but you want to make sure your life means something.
Well, yeah,
you want to be
that
known
speaks for everybody.
something.
Yeah, you want to make your name known.
Yeah.
You want to have a legacy.
Yeah. And in that way, with stoicism, that does help tremendously, because as we're trimming the fat off of the alphas and we're helping establish that core in the betas, we're creating that just decent, level-headed person that can, everything that they have it's not more than they can chew. It's everything they can handle. And let me tell you what, when you have just that perfect amount of those types of necessities in your life and those people around you, you're going to move a lot further ahead than if you have way too much of it. Because all that's going to do is bog you down. If you go out there and you just carry what you can carry on your back, you're going to travel a lot further than if you were weighing yourself down. To not be so strong on that, let me give you something else a little bit here to go off of, right? Because that's my drive home. I think it's solid. But many Greek philosophers will tell you to examine who you want to become and then become it. So focusing on the ideal person you can be is the goal here.
And I think that's why it's really good that we had that episode on like faking it till you make it, right? You mentioned that you should have mentors, or that's actually the benefit of what we're talking about, because you can have that person that you're striving to be already. You can take those traits from him or her and aspire to be like them. Not be them, but be like them with your own twist to it. But I think that about wraps it up. Got to be that gentleman. You got to find that middle ground. Can't be too toxic. Know your worth.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So without further ado, thank you for listening and following along with this 2-part series. I know instead of it being 2 weekly drives on Mondays, it's Monday and Wednesday. So please like and share, tell people about this so that they can learn how to avoid being too beta and learn how to avoid being too toxic when it comes to being an alpha, finding that middle ground. Follow us on Facebook and Parler at The Motivating Force, Instagram at Podcast TMF. We're going to have really fun and light episodes next week. Don't want to give out too much redacted information here. Cough, cough, cough. Those are going to be coming out Monday and Wednesday at 8 a.m. EST. Gon' get.